Welcome to the CCAT candidate debate with three candidates for Carver Selectmen. My name is Charles Mathewson from WATD 95.9 FM. Catherine Gallerani of Gatehouse Media is joining me tonight to question the candidates. The candidates are Andy Cardarelli, Ron Clark, and Alan Dunham. We have a format tonight with opening statements, closing statements, and questions in between. Before we started the program, reached into the official CCAT coffee cup reserved just for this purpose, to establish the order of the opening statements, and the closing statements will be in the reverse order. Andy Cardarelli has the first opening.
Hello, my name is Andy Cardarelli. I've been a resident of Carver for the last 10 years. I'm also your vice chairman of the Carver Finance Committee here in town, and I've been on that for the last 3 or 4 years as well. I've been very active in town politically, trying to see what different parts of government was representing the people, to see where our tax dollars were going. I basically started doing that because I was kind of tired of seeing my taxes raised every year without anything physically to show for it. And I know that's a sentiment around town I've gathered as well. My wife and I, I'll go back a little bit, my wife and I chose Carver to, basically because we both grew up in Quincy. And we wanted to live in a more rural setting. We both loved the country. We chose Carver specifically. We loved the cranberry bogs and the farms and the harvest. We loved the fact that houses weren't an arm's length away from you and you could touch them outside of a window. A lot of things like that we've grown up with, and kind of a lack of privacy in our own yards. And just the love of the country and the rural character of town. So we had moved down here, and have met many, many really good friends throughout town, and we've tried to bring ourselves, include ourselves in town goings on as best as we could. And I've involved myself in different issues in town. Some people might have known me from the solar issues in town, getting up and speaking about that. Some others might have known me from when the debates with the stretch energy code was going on. I had stood up and spoke against that, not for any specific reason, but I shouldn't say that, not for any specific reason against being energy efficient, just because I thought it went too far into people's homes and told them what they could do or not do with the building materials. So I'm running right now. Basically, I'm running right now because I think there needs to be a voice of common sense brought back to the town. I've watched on the Finance Committee. I've watched the funding and the budgets go up every year, and I see the residents be left behind, and many of them are having a hard time paying their tax bills as it is right now. And that's one of the number one things I hear from people when I meet them out in the street. So I decided to throw my hat into the ring, and just to kind of bring a voice of the people back into town hall and bring respect for the residents and taxpayers back to town leadership.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you. I'm Ron Clark. I want to thank CCAT and WATD for sponsoring this debate tonight. I've lived in the town of Carver for 28 years with my wife Sharon, my son Jason, and my daughter Jessica, both of whom went through the Carver school system successfully. Jason graduated in '97, Jessica in 2002. They both went on to graduate from college and are now properly raising wonderful families and providing us with some wonderful grandchildren. I've worked with Liberty Mutual Commercial Insurance for most of my life. During that process, during that time, I've managed millions of dollars of premium and been responsible for hiring, firing, and evaluating staff. prior experience in the town includes serving 3 terms on the Board of Selectmen through the mid-90s and early 2000s. I'm currently chair of the Capital Outlay Committee. I've served in the School Committee, the Council on Aging, and on the Finance Committee for a number of years. I'm running again for a number of reasons, and I didn't decide lightly to run again because I know what's involved in being a selectman in town. But among the reasons I'm running this time partly was to bring civility back to the Board of Selectmen. I know that the 5 members that we have there are all vested in what's best for the town of Carver, but it just seems as if we've lost the ability to, or they've lost the ability to have conversations with each other and agree to disagree. Things seem to be, everything seems to get very personal. And I know when I served on the board before, I had a variety of folks, and we had some wonderful meetings that some of them got kind of excitable, but we were always able at the end of the night to shake hands, respect each other. When the Board of Selectmen made a decision, we all supported what the ultimate decision was, even if perhaps we hadn't voted in favor of it. And I think we need to return to that and be able to, at the end of the night, maybe go out and enjoy a beverage together. I'm also running because I am 100% behind a new school, whether that's the renovation of the current school complex or building a new school somewhere else in the town of Carver. What we have now is the 5th worst elementary school complex in the state. We cannot allow our children to continue to attend an inferior school and provide them essentially an inferior education when the infrastructure is crumbling around them. So I am 100% behind moving forward with a new elementary school complex. And I would remind you that as you vote for selectmen, at some point it is going to come back to the Board of Selectmen to move the funding mechanism forward to fund that school. And it does take a supermajority of 4 selectmen to vote in favor of that in order for the school to move forward. And finally, the other major reason I'm running is to attack the heroin problem that we have in town. This problem is not unique to us. Southeastern Massachusetts, for some reason, seems to right now be leading the country in the heroin epidemic that's taking place. And I think it's important to work with our police department in trying to attack head-on the heroin issues that we have. And toward that end, I support the hiring of a detective and a school resource officer and make that one of our highest funding priorities as we enter the new fiscal year. Thank you.
Alan?
All right. Hi, my name's Alan Dunham. I get to go last here, but I do want to thank WATD and CCAT for this opportunity to have this debate tonight. But before we go on, I'd like to ask everybody that's watching and listening right now to go ahead and pause for a moment and keep the firefighters who perished in Boston yesterday in your thoughts and prayers, as well as their families and the entire Boston Fire Department. It was a tragic loss. Thank you. As I said, I'm Alan Dunham. I was raised in Carver. My family moved here when I was 3, so I got a chance to go through the entire school system in Carver and eventually to Plymouth Carver High. And then from there, I attended college for a year and a half before joining the United States Air Force. And growing up, my dad always used to say, you know, you really have to go ahead and give back to the community that you live in. And after going off for the Air Force and college and finally getting married and attending, having work, I was finally able to move back here in 1993. So I took that opportunity to start serving all the citizens in Carver as soon as I got back into town. And I did that by joining the Carver Fire Department. And I'm very proud and was honored to be able to serve the citizens of Carver by serving on the Carver Fire Department for those 20 years. As to why I'm running, I started getting a bad feeling at the way the Board of Selectmen was working. They weren't working as a team. And with a fire department background and also a military background, I was used to seeing things work as a team, because you have to work as a team to be able to get things done and to always go ahead and get forth the best solutions for any problem that you may be facing, either individually or as a town. Your group has to work together, not for one group or another. So I really feel I can help the board and help the town by being a member of that team, getting people to work together. Yes, you can have disagreements on a particular issue, but as Ron said, you go ahead, you debate the issue without being personal. You look at the facts from each perspective, pro and con, and you reach a consensus. Consensus and compromise. Right now, those are 2 words that are not being used by the Board of Selectmen, and they have to be used in order to go ahead and make progress in what we need to do. And not just take care of things for this year and next year. But the town of Carver and the Board of Selectmen, it's all the boards, have to start looking at where we want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We can no longer afford to take a short-term view to solutions. We have to be taking a long-term view. I too strongly support a new elementary school. I went to the Governor John when it was before the Irwin K. Washburn was there. Irwin K. Washburn was, frankly, was pretty much done on the cheap. They wanted, it had to be done within the levy, and we didn't get the years out of it. We need a new elementary school that's going to serve not only the children of today, but children of the next generation and the next and the next. We need to build a building that's not going to last 20 years or 30 years. We need to have an elementary school that will last for 50, 60, 70 years, or else we're going to be back here and the next generation is going to be having this same argument about funding a new school. And thirdly, we really need to attack the drug problem in Carver. There's been a good start with mobilizing the community. I'm proud to be a member of that, along with about 100 other members of the community, and I urge more people to join that. It's a good first step effort, but we have to have the leaders of the town, the Board of Selectmen, encourage the police department, schools, and other groups to work together to end this scourge that's killing our children. So those are pretty much the reasons why I'm running for the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Okay, and now the first question from Catherine Gallerani.
Good evening.
Good evening.
On one of those topics, the heroin epidemic is a topic locally, particularly with some unfortunate overdoses in Carver. And I guess the governor's declared a public health emergency. Do you believe the selectmen have a role to play in addressing this epidemic? And what are your thoughts on ways to address the drug problem beyond what has started in Carver?
Who?
You.
All right. I certainly believe that the selectmen have a role to play in providing leadership in the town and allocating resources to the police and other services, and maybe the schools, or additional funds basically we could use to educate parents to the dangers of drugs, what to look for in the homes, what to look for that their children might be getting into, or friends they might have, because really you have to start looking out for these things when they're very young, and really not having them try anything one time would be the ultimate success. But you have to deal with all the different aspects, and that goes from not just kids but to adults. The two deaths we had not too long ago were both in their 30s, so it goes from the kids and to the adults. I believe the right thing that's happening now is that we're allocating the police to go ahead, and the new town administrator has put some additional funds in for the police chief to beef up his plans for this, and that's actually shown some benefits. With some drug busts, and but I definitely believe that the selectmen do have a role, and I would be for that 100%. I've actually been in conversations with the police chief on this since before I decided to run, about what to do, because I was finding needles on a regular basis in front of my home, and almost got stuck with one just picking up a coffee cup. So I definitely think that this is something that can take the whole town should be involved in.
Yes, as I mentioned in my introduction, I think this is right there with the school is the #1 priority. It's literally a matter of life and death with both our students and our younger adults in town. I think the role the selectmen play, first of all, is in recommending the budget process. We set the table in terms of what our recommendations are for where the money should be spent, and I think by emphasizing that we are in favor of hiring a detective and a school resource officer, we're sending the message that this is a #1 priority. I know from conversations with the chief, he believes that armed with those additional resources, that he can really make a dent in what's going on, both in the distribution and the use of heroin in the town of Carver. I think the selectmen can play a role in reaching out to other community resources throughout the state that can come in and help educate the public at large. I think through the Mobilizing Carver movement, that's a way we've started to get parents involved, get students involved, and get the message out there. And I think just in general, just trying to help educate the public as to just how extreme this problem is and make them aware so that everybody makes it their priority to try to stomp out what is essentially becoming an epidemic on the South Shore.
Alan?
Unfortunately, this problem didn't just pop out of thin air. This has been a slowly growing problem throughout the last years, and it's now reaching a head. The Board of Selectmen, as the elected leaders of the town, do have a very huge role to play in this. As Ron said, and Andy, setting the budget, getting the police the resources they need, then reaching out, working with the school committee and the school to help them with any plans they need and programs to help maybe get some extra funding or at least help them go ahead and organize things. And then encouraging the community, really reaching out. Like I said, a good start with the mobilizing the community, but that's being led pretty much by the school. That they've taken the lead on that. The selectmen need to go ahead and really fully support that. They did take a good step because they were supposed to have a meeting on the 25th and they postponed it, their selectmen meeting, to the 1st, so it would not interfere with mobilizing the community. They need to be able to do more and really encourage, take the lead, not only for the schools and these communities, but as Ron said, reach out to the town, to the parents, to younger adults. Maybe help organize some training for the young kids, because where we lose them sometimes is once they leave high school, but they don't move on to college. We've got to make sure that we go ahead and reach those young adults before, because that's a very dangerous time for them. And again, the board needs to take a lead on that, just as they need to take a lead on most everything that goes in the town to show they work together and work together with the school, with the community to help combat this problem.
Okay.
Excuse me, would you mind if I had one other?
Absolutely not, Ron. You know that. Yes, go ahead.
No, we were speaking about this the other night when we were together, and that is that we need to bring our legislators in to discuss a law that was changed a couple of years ago where well-meaning legislators decided that they wanted to make needles readily available to everybody through drugstores and so forth because they were concerned about drug addicts sharing needles and the transfer of AIDS and other diseases, hepatitis and so forth through that. I don't know that anybody has done a causal analysis between the growth of the heroin epidemic that we have currently in the state and the suddenly free availability of these needles, but I think we have to take a close look at whether or not we need to reverse that legislation and not make needles as readily available in the street as they are currently.
I've been looking into this issue, and the experts seem to agree that it began with the needles and OxyContin, the availability. All right, on to another subject, and let's mix up the order. We'll start with Ron, then go to Alan, and then Andy. Carver has a new town administrator in Mike Milanowski. Very capable guy. I watched him in Cohasset. You will have a new Board of Selectmen. 2 of you will replace the 2 incumbents that are not running. What does that mean in terms of change in the town? New board, new town administrator.
Well, first I'd like to say that I worked with Rick LaFawn, the prior administrator, for a long time, and I thought he did a great job carving out the town administrator position in this town. But I think after 17 years in the position, having a new set of eyes in that position is going to be a help in looking at things differently. I think one of the important things is everything has to be on the table now. We're not alone in the type of fiscal constraints that we're facing and the type of fiscal budgetary decisions that we're going to have to be making as we go forward in town. But I think we have to take a look at everything. I know that Michael is taking a look at the whole structure of town government and whether or not it can be reorganized and consolidated in such a way that there can be some sort of a savings, or at least that we function more efficiently. And I think the Board of Selectmen needs to support that and lead the charge in that. Again, the town administrator works for the Board of Selectmen, so it's up to the Board of Selectmen to establish policy and establish the priorities that we want the town administrator to pursue. And I think we need to take a look and put everything on the table in terms of how to make this town function most effectively, because we do have to spend money, we have to raise money on taxes, we have to spend that money, we have to make it a good town to live in, that people want to live here and raise their children here. So we need to make sure that for every tax dollars that's spent, that it needs to be spent. And I think we have to just take a look, open the budget up and just work it from the bottom up and figure out what's going to happen.
Hey, Alan?
I think this is a great opportunity for the town, not only with the new town administrator, but with the new board of selectmen, to come together to work and try to find new creative ways to make the town work more efficiently. Rich Crepon was here. He did a good job, but he'd been here for 17 years. And after that long a period of time, really it's hard for someone to come up with new ideas. Sometimes you need a fresh start. And the new administrator with a new board will have that fresh start. I would anticipate the board to fully support the town administrator, but at the same time, provide a check, because the town administrator does work for the board. So I know he's looking at reorganization. That's a good thing, to try to see where we can do things more efficiently. But it's up to the board to ensure that in that reorganization, that we're doing it smartly. If we're going to be making change, you want to have two things to be the outcome. One, no loss of services. We have to keep those services there for our residents. Two, it needs to save money. If you're going to go ahead and reorganize things and you're going to have less services, well, then that's not a good idea. Or if you're going to reorganize things but you're not going to save any money, why disrupt a lot of people? Now, I'm in favor of investigating the reorganization, because I do believe that there are areas in town, especially in the operation of town hall, that can be done more effectively, more efficiently, for less money, and still keep the same services for the town, if not even improve them a little bit. So I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for the town. I look forward to working with the two town administrator if I'm elected to the board, and I think we can do some great things to get Carver on the right path for the next year, 2, 5, 10, 20 years, because we have to continually make sure we're taking that long-term view.
And Andy Cardarelli.
Thank you. I have worked with Michael since he's been in the town on the finance committee. He's met with us a few different times. I love his frankness, and I love his willingness to tackle the financial issues in town. And he has a very fiscally conservative, fiscally responsible thread in him, as I do. I think one of the biggest things, even beyond money, is that what he's bringing to town is town hall is. He's heard about the divisions in town. He's heard about all the infighting, all of the separations, all the divisions, which the divisions I really am not a fan of either. And he's willing to tackle them, and he's willing to bring the Board of Selectmen together and handle the divides just on the selectmen, the Board of Selectmen. We were at Alan and I were at a Board of Selectmen roundtable, and they spoke of a code of conduct just for the Board of Selectmen. I thought it was a wonderful idea. And these new fresh ideas, when someone new comes in, is what the town needs. And when you go back to dealing with the financial issues, Mr. Milanowski is helping us tackle things that have been kicked down the road, the can down the road for years and years, and nothing has been done about. And Mr. LaFond was a nice man. I had never had a problem with him. But I concur with my two opponents here. He was here just a little too long, and I think it's always healthy to bring someone fresh in from time to time. You get the fresh ideas. You can handle new things that you don't have the biases that in the relationships that you might have had with other people.
And the next question comes from Catherine Gallerani of the Carver Reporter.
Hi. There has been some controversy over a particular solar project, Purchase Street. But do you think the town should embrace solar energy? And if so, do you believe that regulations are in place that adequately protect or ensure siting of solar projects?
Let's begin with Alan.
Okay, there has been a lot of talk of the solar project down up at Purchase Street, Great Meadow. And unfortunately, that was really the town's fault. We did not have a solar bylaw in place. And when you don't have guidance in the form of a bylaw, when somebody comes in to do something, you're really behind the 8 ball. So that really prompted the town to go ahead and say, hey, let's get busy, and we created the solar bylaw. Can it be tweaked? I think any bylaw can be tweaked. After it's been in effect in a while, we go back and we study it. I'd be in favor of, in 6 months or so, bringing the solar bylaw committee back together to review to see where we're at. Is this what we want? Because solar power is a viable option for us to increase our tax base as long as it's where it's supposed to be, industrial areas. Nowhere near residential areas, you know, as long as it's in a good place for the solar energy away from residential areas, I think it's a good way, and it's also a pollution-free way of bringing industry into the town. I don't think we should be solely looking, you know, putting all our dollars in solar. I think we should still be encouraging other businesses to move to town. But I think it is a viable option. Again, it was really just a combination of very bad things that came together that resulted in the solar project being put on the behind Great Meadow. Fortunately, they've been working it out. I know they've been having meetings with the neighbors, both the planning board, the town administrator, and the residents, to try to work out a compromise so we can protect the neighborhood, but at the same time, they'll be able to go ahead and put at least a limited project in there, limited in scope to what they originally planned.
And Andy Carterelli.
Anybody who knows me in town knows this is something that's right in my wheelhouse. I've stood up for the residents of the Purchase Street area, the Great Meadow residents, since the announcement of this. This project here, I will do a quick aside and answer your question. This project here, the Purchase Street Great Meadow project, was never cited correctly. The town, the people in town in charge at the time, used a loophole from the state that was put into the bylaws in the time when Jimmy Carter was president, pertaining to rooftop units, with solar not being unreasonably regulated. But in other towns, and I had tried to say this many different times, other towns had regulated solar away from residential areas, and that was approved by the Attorney General. We were told here two different sets of opinions from our town council, one saying we had every right to take that project out of there, out of the Purchase Street area. Then he turned around and completely contradicted himself and said, no, you have to leave it in. And the project, and Alan was right, that project, excuse me, geez, dry throat, sorry. That project was before a solar bylaw. And so, that being said, these projects in residential areas close to residential zones, residential neighborhoods, are very unfair to the people that live there, because these people never signed up to have fields of basically metal and glass to power an industrial project next to their homes. They came for the rural character, as I did, and I've had many conversations. But to your point about solar energy having a place, I agree. I voted for, and I voted for on the Finance Committee, the adoption of the Ravenbrook property, having the solar panels up there. I am a supporter of solar panels on the North Carver landfill that's proposed. I was a supporter of the solar panels on Route 44 that helps power the North Carver Water District. These things, clean energy has a place, but like any other industrial project, they need to be put in the appropriate place in town. And that's what I believe. Thank you.
And Ron Clark.
I don't think I can add too much from what my fellow candidates have said. I pretty much agree with both of them. I think that I support solar energy. I think if members of the town, if residents of the town have locations that are away from residential communities, that they can place solar panels, I have no problem with that. I think, though, we may have to take another look at the bylaws and make sure that we make any changes so that they don't creep up on any residential communities. I think any of us, if we suddenly found out we were going to look out our off our back porch and find out that we're going to be looking instead of trees, we're going to be looking at an array of solar panels, none of us would want to be put in that position. So I think it's probably a good idea to go back and take a look at the bylaw and maybe tweak it to make sure that we avoid that sort of an issue going forward. But as a renewable energy source, it makes sense, and as a possible increase to our tax base, it makes sense with those caveats.
Okay, there used to be a sign in North Carver inviting business to town. I don't know how successful or not that has been. What would you do specifically to increase the commercial tax base in town? Let's start with Alan Dunham.
Oh, sorry, Ron. I thought it would be your turn to start, but that's all right. Basically, yeah, it used to be Carver was friendly to business or whatever the sign said, and we went away from that. And again, this gets to the team concept. The Board of Selectmen, as the elected leaders of the town, need to go ahead and work with the town planner, with the planning board, to put our heads together to figure out what is it about Carver that they're not coming in for. Why aren't we not getting business in the town? Now, one of the reasons before was we had no water up there. And Middleborough, where we were getting the town water from, said, no, we're not going to go ahead and supply water for a lot of businesses. So now that we have the North Carver Water District, that does give us the opportunity to be able to provide water for businesses coming in. And we have to go ahead and make sure that businesses know that we want them to come. Now, we want businesses that are smart for Carver, ones that aren't going to go ahead and cause us any pollution or things like that. But bring in good business with good paying jobs. We have plenty of area up there, so we really need to go ahead and stress building up the North Carver industrial area. I mean, it's there. The Whitworth property, we've really got to encourage them to go ahead and do some development with that. I know the town planner's been talking with the new owners, so hopefully over the next year or two, we'll see some more development up there. But that it should be, again, the Board of Selectmen taking a leadership role that they're elected to do and working with other boards to come up and try to create opportunities for businesses to move into town.
Eddie Cottarelli.
I have had conversations with our town planner, Jack Hunter, on this very subject not too long ago. He had given me a little primer of what they have done so far. So far, they have done what I think is a pretty admirable job, from what I understand from his explanation, in trimming, red tape, kind of making permitting, streamlining permitting. So they only have to, I think it's a 120-day or 100-day window, and all the boards are working together at the same time when a business comes to town. My one question to Mr. Hunter at the time, and I would advocate for this, is that he actually had told me they work with brokers. Brokers come to us with, and they speak to brokers about different parcels of land that are available. And my thought and my idea was, instead of waiting for someone to come for us, with the competition of towns in the area looking for businesses for tax, generating revenue, why are we waiting for them to come to us? Why don't we have a team of people headed by Mr. Hunter to go out and solicit these companies, be aggressive and go find them and say, we need companies to come here, we want you to come here, and the selectmen can work through maybe a tax package approved by town meeting if it was appropriate, if it came to that. I think everything should be on the table. We need companies to come to town. We not only for taxes, but we need companies to come to town to employ our people. We need, there are people in town that don't have jobs. I know a lot of homes that are sitting empty or almost they're occupied, but they're in foreclosure. These people need help, and the taxpayers need help with the taxes we pay. And one of the only ways to reduce that is to bring a bigger commercial and industrial base to the town of Carver, and I'd be an advocate for that.
And Ron Clark.
Well, Carver, when people think of Carver, they think of cranberries. And a lot of the town is dedicated to the agricultural farming of cranberries, and there are uplands associated with those cranberry farms. And that also is what helps keep us rural. We have had studies done during my prior time on the board. Studies were done exploring what we could do in building out the town of Carver and bringing more business in. And that includes the Whitworth property up there by 44, properties down in South Carver, wherever we could place, industrial type and commercial business. And it can help the tax base. It's never going to solve the dilemma that a lot of what happens here in Carver ultimately falls on the residential taxpayer. Not if we're going to keep the town rural. Which survey after survey says they like the rural nature of the town. I think Andy referenced he moved here because it's a rural community. We're not trying to become Weymouth or Quincy or one of those tight-packed suburbs up near Boston. So it is a dilemma for us. We can attract some businesses into town. They can help us with our budget, but it's not going to be a panacea. It's not going to solve our problems. And I know, for instance, some people were lamenting Cisco didn't come here and they went over to Plimpton. I don't think a lot of people are aware that there was, that Plimpton doesn't see one tax dollar out of that deal for almost 10 years, you know, in cutting that deal. And then it's a graduated increase over time. Eventually there will be some payback for that, but you have to be careful. We can definitely encourage it and bring business growth, but no one should think that we can change the character of the town and keep it rural at the same time.
Okay, and the last broad policy question comes from Catherine Gallerani of the Carver Reporter.
Well, I think we've heard from two of you that you support the elementary school building project, and you can tell me what you think of it too. But do you have a particular option you'd favor? And putting that aside, how do you, as selectmen, support the school into getting this passed and getting the state funding?
Andy Cardarelli, why don't you take the first shot at that?
Okay. This is a very hot topic in town. I've spoken to many people about this. There was a lot of young mothers, young parents are very concerned about this, and as I am as well. I don't have kids in the school, but that doesn't matter. It's still important to me because you want to give the best education you can to your town's children, and you also, a new school would boost property values, and that would help everybody as well. We have to be careful, though. I do support, I'll say it right now, I do support a new school being put into the town. I am a little worried about the money, about the financial hit the residents are going to take, because like I said, I have gone around and spoke to many different people in town, and I always ask them, what's your biggest concern in town? The number one is taxes, right? The number two is usually the school after that. So these are two different things. So if you can work them both together, if we could get the school done, and my thought is, and what I want to see happen as a selectman in Carver, I would ask, well, I would hope my fellow selectmen would support me in this. I would ask every official in town that's related to the financial issues of this to investigate every funding source possible to finance a school, to take, instead of letting the taxpayers take 100% of the hit. The Building Study Committee had a plan for this in 2011 that would have, I believe, required different departments to put in a certain amount of money out of their budgets. I believe the school was between $200,000 and $300,000 out of their budget. They have a $23 million budget, but that was voted down by the school committee at the time. And I understand that's a scary number to see, but on the finance committee last year, they came up to us with a $630,000 deficit. This year they have a $900,000 deficit. So when you look, maybe if you could tweak $300,000 back then and we'd be looking at a new school right now, and a lot of people don't understand that. So I think that idea should be brought back and maybe tweak the numbers. We're in a tougher situation with the shortfall in the town and the school, but I certainly support something being done with the school, whether it's new or renovation. The bottom line is that school has been neglected for too long, and there hasn't been a plan for this. And this is exactly one of those cans that I said was kicked down the road for years, and things like this need to be addressed.
Okay, Ron Clark.
In terms of whether we renovate or build new, I'm open to either. I think we probably need to explore both options. The traditional thinking is that it is less expensive to renovate. There are advantages to building a new complex because you can keep the old school going until it's time to transfer the kids over. But I think ultimately we're going to run the numbers and see what makes sense financially. Certainly from 5 years ago when we first started looking at this issue, costs are undoubtedly going to be creeping up in terms of what it's going to cost us ultimately for this project. From my experience dealing with school building projects in the past, I believe it's almost against state rules to not incur at least a 20-year debt exclusion to move forward with a project of this nature. I think that's, and I'm behind that if that's what it comes to. I don't think there's going to be a way. I think Andy sort of references the fact that we came up with a very creative way to fund a new fire station in town by setting aside personal growth when they come in, monies when they come in. And that works out great. We're feeling a budget pinch because of it, There's about $400,000 that would have been available in the operating budget to pay for some of the shortfalls that we're having with the school committee and with the schools and other departments. So it is creating a strain on the budget, but we will be able to move forward with a fire station and ultimately a police station under the tax levy. I don't think it's realistic to think in terms of the fact that we're going to be able to do the same sort of thing with the schools. I think we're going to have to move forward with a debt exclusion. But I'll tell you, for me, public education has been at the core and foundation of American democracy since we established the country. And if I have to pay a couple of $100 extra a year in my taxes in order to fund a new complex, I'm willing to do that. And I hope, and that's my stance. And if you're going to vote for me, then you have to know where I stand on that issue.
Alan Dunham, the school issue.
Okay, as far as which I prefer, a rebuild or a brand new school, I think both options have to be fully vetted, because we have to find out, what are the pluses and minuses. There are pluses and minuses when you're concerned doing a rebuild on the current site of the current elementary school, and there are pluses and minuses putting a whole new campus on the South Meadow Road campus with the high school, middle school, and these have to be vetted out, not only from a cost standpoint, also the parents need to be involved too in this process, and the whole process has to be completely open. I think part of the problem we had before was, even though the process was kind of open, it could have been open more, so there was a suspicion that built up that you're not telling us everything. And so when it came time to go ahead and put it on the ballot, there wasn't enough information out for everybody in the town to really make a good, sound decision. It was more of a mistrust type of deal. And again, back to where we have with the board today, that I was saying, there's some not trust. You got to be able to trust that the whole thing is being done above board. So we have to investigate both. Another piece of this pie is going to be the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority. There also once we go ahead and vet both plans, we're going to have to present them both to the MSBA, and they may say, okay, we'll go ahead and provide funding for either one, or they may come down and say, no, we want you to go with that option. So that might end up being a deciding factor. As far as the cost of a new school, there's no way around it. Every year we wait, it costs us millions of dollars more. If we'd built this school back in 2009 when we were starting, I've talked to the superintendent, and she said she could have probably gotten the building done for around $30 million. We're not going to be able to get it for that this time. It's going to cost us a lot more. And if we keep postponing it, that cost is going to go up. People have said, we can't afford a new school. As far as I'm concerned, we can't afford not to have a new school, because the one we're using right now is not going to last. It may last 1 year, 2 if we're lucky, but it is getting so old. And there's also, back then, people are saying, well, they just weren't taking care of the school. I know the school has a binder, yay thick, of all the work orders that were done to try to keep that school up. Sooner or later, it outlives its designed lifespan. So, the time has come, and if it takes a debt exclusion to finish off the funding, yes, we should look for everywhere we can to save money on it, but still build a school that's going to last 50, 60 years. But if it comes down to a debt exclusion, I will vote as a member of the Board of Selectmen to put that on a ballot to the people.
Okay, you're listening to the Carver Cable Access TV's political forum. We're hearing from 3 candidates for selectmen in the upcoming town election: Andy Cardarelli, Ron Clark, and Alan Dunham. See, I got it right that time, in order. Okay. Now, let's try something different. We're going to play a card game. So I want to ask, Andy, what's your favorite card game? Poker, cribbage?
Go fish.
Okay.
One of my favorites.
And Ron?
Texas Hold'em.
And Alan?
Yes, I have to admit that I am a Texas Hold'em fan.
Okay. We'll start with the fish guy.
Okay.
The fish guy.
Earlier, when we chose the order of the opening statements, these 3 gentlemen also picked at random a card. They didn't know what was on the card. There's a question on the card. Each of these gentlemen will read the question and answer the question. Andy?
And by the way, just that was for comical relief. Yeah. Actually, it's blackjack.
The truth comes out.
Should the North Carver Water District have more transparency? Yes. I've seen these issues with the Finance Committee in town. I have seen what was started as a project to bring business to North Carver, basically hoping if we built the district, businesses would come. They haven't come, and that's a lot to do with the recession. I understand. In reality, it is a good thing in many different aspects to attract business to town. But I thought this was very short-sighted. I thought it was a short-sighted project. The North Carver Water District was almost a $9 million project, and it has 55 customers. 55. I mean, that's terrible. You know, the town is paying for almost their portion of it's almost $6 million, and this year alone, it's costing the town an additional $140,000 in our budget to help support the North Carver Water District. Transparency, I don't know if there's been a question of transparency, but I think there's been a question of town officials not having the foresight, I should say the long view sight of a project and where it's going to go. Because every time I speak about this with someone on one of the water commissioners, their solution to making them solvent is to expand the system. And when you hear expand the system, that means running water lines down past your home, and now you're automatically bettered. And I think in towns that have bad water, and there's areas in North Carver that have bad water, they needed this. But to expand this to the whole town, to force people to pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over 30 years to be bettered, is not sticking with the cost effectiveness of our town, and I certainly wouldn't want it. I'd rather stay with my well, and I think this is this is just one of the issues one of the things I would keep an eye out for the people for projects like this, and have the taxpayers in mind from the very beginning and what's going to happen. Because, and one more thing, when you see this type of thing expanded, and then it becomes mandatory to hook up to it. I've seen that in other towns. It's happened to friends of mine in Canton. When you go by someone's house and you see the little permit sign, well number, so and so and so, that means they had a well there at one time, but now they're forced not to use it. And the only reason they have the well permit is to use it for irrigation. They can't use it for drinking water. I mean, Carver's a small rural town. I think we need to keep that in mind when we do projects like this.
Okay, now you two poker players, remember the questions on the previous cards. Ron, what do you have?
Am I concerned about the condition of elderly housing in Carver? I guess I'm not completely clear if are we talking about specific projects in town, or if anyone can bring clarity to
the town elderly housing.
That behind the library, for instance,
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah, from what I understand, a few years back, we brought in an outside firm to be responsible to manage that facility. And from what I can gather, we've had a few residents of that facility that have run into problems with the management team, and they've been faced with being evicted from their homes. And I cannot claim to know all the details, but the details that I do know seem to me that the town does not get to have a say in what the management team is doing. And I've heard, if as I've heard the stories, some of these evictions seem unfair, and when you're talking about an elderly person, you can't just take lightly evicting them out of their homes. And so that I think the town would need to take another look at whatever they've done, and again, I realize this is also a county and state issue as well in terms of the oversight. But I think we need to work with the powers that be to try to make sure that we, in the town of Carver, since these are residents of the town, have some sort of say with these individuals before we proceed with any sort of an eviction process.
Alan Dunham, turn over your cards, sir.
I had more tape on mine. Does the police department need more personnel and why? As we talked already today, the board directed the town administrator to go ahead and look at adding a detective and a school resource officer. And this was something that, it wasn't just out of the blue that the selectmen decided to do this. They heard from the town. And a lot of it's been generated by the heroin epidemic. I mean, we do have a detective in town, and they're doing a great job. But you talk to them, and there are so many steps. They really have to work hard to make a case and make a case stick. Especially, I've heard horror stories from officers and the detectives themselves about people they've arrested. Go ahead and they've had them arraigned, and they're out of the door from the courthouse before they go ahead and finish the paperwork. That's something the legislature has to take care of. But the department, it does need more resources. We used to have a full-time DARE officer. I don't think we can go back to that, but a resource officer, somebody that's in the schools that the kids can learn to trust. Because right now, the police department's just people that come and raid, hassle them, give them a hard time. If we can get an officer into the schools to work with these kids, to be a face that these kids can go to, they'll start going ahead and trusting the police. And the police department, and they're doing their best to go ahead and build up a trust with the school population. But you need an extra detective, and you need two bodies. Because right now, they're barely able to just cover their patrol areas on a regular basis without the extra work needed to do the proper investigation, to find out who the pushers are, where they're getting their drugs, how they're getting into town, because you can't stop the flow from coming in town until you know how it's coming in. And an extra detective will add to that, their ability to do that. So I am fully in favor of adding 2 positions at this time, and then looking a year or 2 down the road, we may have to add another one. But to start with, let's get 2 new officers on. Yes, it's going to make some tightness in the budget, but you have to go ahead and choose what you want to spend your money on. And I think this is a resource right now that the town needs to help fully fight this drug problem.
Okay, now here's what makes this a game. In reverse order, starting with Alan Dunham, was there a card that you wished you had picked at random?
I was happy with this one, but I'd like the North Carver Water District question.
Okay.
The original question was, should the North Carver Water District have more transparency? I think they're doing a lot with that. They're really, before it was like, well, when does the North Carver Water District meet? And where do they meet? It was kind of this agency out there that we voted the commissioners, but we never really heard from them or anything else like that. They have turned that around basically since Mr. Malinowski got here. They're publicizing their meetings. They're not thinking 1 year down the road. They've been working since January on a pro forma. Basically, it's a cost estimate that goes out 30 years, year by year by year, and you can see where the costs right now, if things stay the same with just very modest growth, how much more it's going to cost until about year 8, when all of a sudden it starts making money. So, like any type of project that you're trying to start, the North Carver Water District, I know people were hoping it would make money right off the get-go, but it's not really, when you finally look at it, it's not really practical to think that an endeavor that large is going to make money right off the get-go. Especially, again, they got hit with bad economy. A lot of it was bad timing. Now, there have been people that, there's been a lot of yelling out, they lied to us, they didn't tell us the truth. I don't really think that's true, but even if there was part of that, I don't think we gain anything. And too often in Carver, we have this habit of looking back at what happened before, not to learn from mistakes, but to assign blame. Now, it's true you can benefit from going back and saying, okay, we made a mistake here, we want to avoid it. But to just keep going back and harping on this person did this person did that, this person did that, does not help the town go forward. And the town has to go forward. We have to face our problems and our concerns right now and start working on them. Don't worry about who did what to who. How do we come together as a team and work forward for the betterment of the town to go ahead and solve these problems?
Hey, Ron Clark, do you want to draw again?
I would have liked the police question.
There you go.
Well, go right ahead.
I agree a lot with a lot of what Alan said. I guess just relative to thinking in terms of some perspective, I know that according to the FBI, a town of 12,000 citizens like the town of Carver, we're supposed to have 24 policemen on staff. During going back to my time on the board, I think the peak we ever reached in this town was about 18. And I'm not sure how often we ever had 18 actually available and on the street because of various disabilities and so forth that they would bump into. Right now, the last I heard, now maybe someone's back by now, but I think we were down to 10 officers available to be on the street, 3 others out on disability, for a total of 13 officers. And we should be up at least, I think, at 18. So by hiring a detective and a school resource officer, it helps, but really those are being brought on board to help with this heroin epidemic that we're having. And we still need to get officers in the street. I know that the police chief is in favor of a program. He doesn't. I know at one point someone had raised the idea of having some sort of an override to try to staff the police up all at once. I don't think anyone really is in favor of that, and I know the police chief is not in favor of that. I do know that the police chief is in favor of developing a plan that over the next 6 years, we add an officer a year to get the department back up to the proper staffing levels to make sure that we can provide the citizens the protection they deserve in town. And if we get a properly staffed police department, that's going to go a long way towards helping these other drug problems that we have in town.
Andy Cardarelli, are you close to 21? Do you want to draw again?
Am I close? Do I look 21?
No, I mean,
No,
you
for
said you were a
black
black.
I know. Sure, I'll take the red ace. How about, could I see the elderly question, please? Even though I will admit, thank you. I will admit I don't know a lot about this
Excuse me,
specific.
those are my notes at the bottom, but you just want the top question.
I should turn it upside down. I don't know a lot about this specific issue because when things were brought to town hall, to the selectmen's meetings, things were left kind of cryptic because they didn't want to kind of point anyone out or cause anybody any embarrassment or anything or point fingers. So everything was kind of cryptic and left it in the background. So I can't really comment about that situation, even though I don't think anybody should be put into bad situations. I think we should definitely address seniors with all respect. And the issue with this, and the reason I picked this one is, we have many senior citizens in this town, and I've met many of them, and I just urge people to look out for your senior citizens, your seniors. Go check on them once in a while in the bad weather. See if they're having problems. If a lot of them are very proud. They won't say anything if they're having problems with money. If you hear something, whatever, maybe go offer them to take them out for dinner or something, or bring something to them. But these people, they deserve our respect. They don't deserve to be forgotten. I think everyone will agree with that. These people served our country, and like my dad, who was a World War II Marine, and my grandfather was in the Seabees in the South Pacific and everything else. These people sacrificed everything for us. And you know what? What's really cool about our seniors? They know a lot more than we do. They've been through it all. So it's actually very good to bring your kids up and go see Grandpa, go see your great uncle, even though he might be, you might call him the crazy Uncle Eddie or something, but go talk to him and see him and make sure they're okay.
Now we're moving on to the lightning round. The rule here is one-word answer, either yes or no, or if you've been given another option, the other option, but a one-word answer. We'll begin with Catherine Gallerani of the Carver Reporter.
Yes, would you favor a medical marijuana dispensary in town?
Real quick,
No.
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 in terms of drugs, would you prefer more enforcement or treatment? Andy?
One word you said? Treatment.
Ron?
Treatment.
And Alan?
Yeah, treatment.
Kathy?
Well, would you want a wind turbine in town? Wind turbine in town?
A large wind turbine, like in Kingston?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't.
Ron?
No.
No.
Would you call yourself liberal, conservative, or other? Andy?
I am a conservative.
Ron?
Moderate.
Alan?
Conservative.
Kathy?
I met a voter the other day. I think she's been voting into her hundreds. Her name is Vera, and she turned 105. Have you ever met her?
I have not. I have not.
No.
No, I have not.
It's my little shout out to Vera.
I'd like to meet her.
Okay, now we randomly selected the order of opening statements. We'll take that in reverse order. That means Alan Dunham. Try to keep it to 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, again, I want to thank WATD, CCAT for this opportunity. I think this has been a good chance for you, the voters, to go ahead and get your first inkling of how we feel about things, what our priorities are. For me, priority is a new elementary school. It has to be done. We can't afford to wait any longer. 2, we have to deal with the drug problem. It has gotten way out of hand, not just in Carver, but in southeastern Massachusetts. It's a problem we have to work together as a community. We have to come together. And thirdly, the board has to come together. I don't think they have to agree on every single topic that comes before them, but they need to be able to discuss it. Pros, cons, and be able to reach compromise instead of acrimony. Because right now, the Board of Selectmen is not working as a team. If we're going to go forward as a town and take this town to the next level, solve our problems, not only for today, but for tomorrow and 5 years, 10 years down the road, we have to have a board that leads by example and works as a team. And I feel I'm the person to do that, and I would very much like your vote. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Ron Clark.
Again, I'll also thank CCAT, WATD, and my fellow candidates for participating tonight. This is sort of the real spirit of American democracy, when citizens can see the candidates and make informed decisions. And hopefully the Nielsen ratings will be good for this program. I know with the likes of the moderators that can only help. But professionally, and as part of the Board of Selectmen, I've had to deal with tight fiscal budgets and make difficult decisions over time. And as I said earlier, I think everything needs to be on the table now for discussion. The way we've done things in the town of Carver for years, going back decades, needs to be re-examined. Maybe we change them, maybe we don't. But I think we need to put everything on the table and consider and just think of new ways of doing things. Think outside the box. My experience, I think, can help the Board of Selectmen with decisions as we move forward. But the discussion needs to be civil. We need to respect each other. And we need to agree to disagree and then support the decisions of the board once those decisions are made. And also make sure that whatever we do is always for the benefit of the whole town. There are a number of issues affecting the town. We've talked about the heroin problem. It's a matter of life and death that needs to be addressed immediately. We've talked about the need to build a new elementary school, and I remind you that you need to have 4 selectmen that are willing to move forward with that school building when it comes back to the board. I'm Ron Clark. I ask for your vote on Saturday, April 26th. The polls open at 8 o'clock and close at 6 p.m. promptly. And even if you don't vote for me, please vote on the 26th.
And Andy Cardarelli.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and attending this with us. Thank you, CCAT and WATD. To the residents of Carver, and hopefully I can do better with my closing statement than I did on my opening. To the residents of Carver, I have become one of you. My wife and I have chosen to live here. We love the town. I am a working class guy. I'm a regular blue collar guy that has his hands in everything within a little small family company, from management to driving to handling steel. I'm one of you, and I stood up instead of complaining, and I volunteered for the Finance Committee, and I'm doing the same right now, volunteering or asking for your vote for selectmen. Of all the issues that have happened in the last few years, they've been big, but you know, and there's no disrespect to my friends over here. They're very nice gentlemen, but on the solar issue, on the issue with personal property rights of the keeping the town out of your home, and like I said, with the stretch energy code, adopting that was a big issue, even though some people believe it's not. and standing up for personal and, for fiscal responsibility for the town and having the town live within its budget. In the last few years, I've been the one who's stood up. I've been the one who's written the articles to the paper. I've been the one who's talked to people, and I've been the one being an advocate for you, the taxpayer in town. All of us agree that a new school or something needs to be done with the school. I agree with that. I'm for that. I just want to look at the numbers and make sure everybody can afford it. No one in town should have to sell their home because they can't afford the property taxes anymore. I watched this happen to a neighbor of mine in Quincy when we lived there. An older gentleman bought his home, raised his kids, paid his house off, and he was selling his house. And I asked him, "Why are you selling your house?" His name was Vin. I said, "Why are you selling your house, Vin?" He said, "I can't afford to stay anymore. The property taxes, I just can't afford it. I'm on a fixed income." So for everybody that talks about the school, also remember the people that they can't go earn overtime. They're on a fixed income. So I think everybody should be brought into the table on this. But these are the people, these are the concerns that we need to have, and that's why I will be your representative on the Board of Selectmen here in Carver if I'm lucky enough for you to vote for me, and I hope to earn that vote on the 26th. Thank you very much.
You have been watching and listening to a political forum in the studios of Carver Cable Access TV. I'm Charles Mathewson of WATD. This is Catherine Gallerani of the Carver Reporter. And as we like to say at the end of these forums, the election is April 26th. If you don't vote, you don't have a say. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.